Lou Merloni, meanwhile, covers the Red Sox and talks sports on WEEI in Boston and NBC Sports in Boston. You can follow Lou on Twitter at Lou Merloni. Lou, first off, thanks for your time. Secondly, how are you and your family doing during all this?
Well, like everybody else, sort of sitting around and going day to day and trying to find new things to do around the house. So it's I just got a 10-year-old boy, so it makes it interesting.
Well, there's no doubt that homeschooling thing has been a lot of fun for a lot of us. Lou, before we get into things Boston and sports, I know you're not afraid to bet on an occasional game. Since there is NASCAR this weekend, and it is the only live sports we have going, will you watch and or gamble on the NASCAR race Sunday?
I think I might dabble in it a little bit. I'm not going to lie to you. Just because at this point, I can't take watching games that I've already know the outcomes. I've watched UFC the last couple nights. I need it, and I'm going to enjoy it. And I tell you what, I am not a NASCAR guy, but I will sit down and I'll watch a little bit of this. And I'll put some cash on.
And MLB Network yesterday was airing parts of the 75 World Series. So, Lou, I'm with you about games that we already know the outcome of. First off, I had a theory about baseball and the proposed 82 games and whether it gets bumped up to 100 or whatever the shortened season's going to be if we have one. That I think for teams like the Red Sox, it might help them. With the injury to Sale and some of the losses that they had during the offseason, trading away of bets, I didn't think a team like Boston could make the playoffs with only 5 playoff spots over 162 games. But if you're going to have 7 playoff spots and you're going to cut the season in half, well, I could see the Red Sox winning 45 out of 82 games and sneaking into the playoffs. And at that point, who knows what happens? Don't you think there are certain teams, and your team might be one of them, that this could help?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of teams you could say that about just because you've shortened the season. I mean, basically, how many times have we looked at the standings in June and said, oh, this team's off to a great start, or, oh, this team looks great, and then, falls apart in the second half because they lack the depth of maybe a better ball club or a better organization in the minor leagues or wherever it might be on the bench. So I just think the shortened season kind of gives hope to a lot of teams. I don't think the Red Sox are a playoff team, but you're right. I mean, 80 games, anything can happen. These guys play 162 to find out who the best is. So I think it helps. I think it's really important for the Red Sox to play baseball this year because they can reset that salary cap or luxury tax, as they call it. Because if there's no baseball, they got the same responsibilities next year they have to stay under. So if they get a season in, at least half a season in, I think they're going to be fine moving forward.
Lou, outside of Tampa, and I think Tampa has a lot of chances this year because every game will be like playing in the Trop for them because they're used to playing in front of, 0 fans. How difficult, your guys played, how difficult will it be for players to adjust to no crowds? Or is that just something media is going to worry about?
No, and, I do wonder that. We were talking about that yesterday, the quality of play. I played a lot of my career in Boston, and it just seemed like everywhere you went, there was a crowd. And then I went to San Diego, and everywhere you went, there was no crowd, right? Depending on what team you were playing, and it was difficult. And I tell you what makes it difficult, a little sneaky thing here, is the fact there's lack of amphetamines. They took those away years ago, maybe I think it was 2003. And before that, sometimes you get that little bit of adrenaline before a game. Guys would take the greenies, as you guys heard back in the day. I don't know, trying to find that adrenaline each and every night with no fans in there. It's every single night. And sometimes you need those fans to get that extra boost of energy. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be tough.
Lou, what'd you think of Blake Snell's comments? And obviously this, big issue between the players and owners always has been any kind of a cap. The players have been adamant, no flipping way. And then on top of it, that these two sides sat down in late March and agreed to an addendum to the CBA. So, your thoughts as a former player about the compensation issue and then Blake Snell's comments in the last 24 hours in which he's just like, listen, I'm not taking a pay cut, and this ain't worth it to me to play if I got to take a cut?
Well, first off, if I was Tony Clark, I would go to my team members, and I would pick the smartest one, and I would let him get interviewed. Because as of right now, Blake Snell represents everything that the Major League Baseball players are thinking. And that's a bad thing. I hated what he said. More in particular, I hated the way he said it, I should say. Okay, because he made it all about money. There's a way to articulate the issues of Major League Baseball players. You start with health and the biggest concern. You know, you sort of soften the crowd with that one, right? And then you kind of can get into the finances if you want. And you can talk about the mistrust over the years with the owners, and you don't believe they're losing money, and we want to see the books. I mean, there's ways to articulate it that I don't think Blake Snell did. To me, he sounded like an idiot. And if I'm Tony Clark, I'm quickly putting somebody out there in front of the media to hopefully represent the players, because I don't want that representing the player.
Well, there's no doubt that the sound bites, and I don't crush anybody for their opinion, and I do respect what you said. It didn't come out right. His backtrack statement about health after is not going to be heard by nearly as many people. No. But Lou, your greater point is that is what I mean. There are a lot of players that came out and said, "Hey, that's what we're thinking," and that's the part of this that they're going to have to control, because there are other players, not the money side, but the health side, that I think obviously have these concerns.
No, they have a lot of concerns, and I'm sure all of them are concerned with money. It's just that right now, I don't think anybody wants to hear it. You know, when you start talking about the health issues, between the owners and the union, that's fine. But when they start diving in, if they're going to negotiate through the media over the finances, there isn't anybody right now that wants to hear it. I mean, there's too many people out of jobs. There's too many people a month away from losing their businesses. These guys got to keep it private, and I get it. You already have a prorated season. And you already agreed on full salaries there. You don't trust the owners at all. The union will never go with a salary cap. There is a financial agreement there to be made, and I think that they will make it. The thing I'm worried about is it might take a couple of weeks. How much damage are they going to do to this league, to their fan base, if they negotiate over the media? I don't think players should be publicly talking about money. Stick to talking about safety. Do it privately.
Talking with Lou Merloni, WEEI and NBC Sports in Boston. Follow Lou on Twitter at Lou Merloni. If you were playing today, how concerned would you be from a health standpoint? You've got a family, and apparently we're going to do this in everybody's home ballpark. We're not relocating and moving everybody to one spot for months at a time. How concerned would you be if you were an active player from a coronavirus standpoint?
I would. I'd be. I mean, listen. I think you'd be sitting there and you're doing all the research you can. This is when you got to trust the scientists and kind of give you that information to try to make you feel safe, or the league to try to make you feel safe. I was single when I was playing. I'm married now with a family. Yeah, I would be concerned, just like a lot of people are concerned right now. And listen, I don't know where you guys are with this thing, but, I would sit there and say, if pre-existing conditions, that's going to be the biggest issue with some of these players, because some of the players have those pre-existing conditions. This is why I still think it's going to be very difficult for this league to start up and all leagues to start up, but those guys I'd be very concerned for. If I felt like I was healthy, and the realization is if I got to go back to work and the economy's got to get going, then I may have to protect my parents. I might not be able to see my parents. I might not be able to see my grandparents, parents, whatever it might be, people that might be vulnerable to this COVID-19. Pre-existing conditions, I may not be able to see them as either. But I have to go out there. I'll do a job, and it'll be concerned, but I would still go out there and play.
Lou, when the money part of this gets put to the forefront instead of the health, and it was already there before Blake Snell made his comments. It probably made it worse. But I've said all along that if they don't play because of the coronavirus, no problem. If at the end of the day, what you just said, the season's canceled, we can't figure out a way to keep our players, our managers, our staffs healthy, so we're going to sacrifice the season. There is not a fan of sports in the world that will have a problem with that. But if baseball doesn't play because the owners and players can't come to some sort of financial agreement and they lose the season because of that, boy, oh boy, It took steroids and Cal Ripken to get us through 94. I don't know personally, Lou, how baseball would recover during a pandemic of not playing for financial reasons. Don't you think that getting some sort of agreement, whether or not they play because of health is separate, but getting this agreement done is paramount for the future of baseball?
I agree 100%. And that's why I say both sides will realize this. Both sides will realize that financially. And they will come to an agreement, but they can't drag it out in the media. Because even if they come to an agreement and this thing gets ugly and people are reading about how the billionaires don't want to lose millions of dollars and the millionaire players don't want to lose a third of their salary, people will turn on them. And God forbid if they can't come to agreement and there's no base. I agree with you. I mean, I don't know. The game right now, I don't know, even up here in Boston where there's a great fan base, people are bored with it. And I know the team is sort of, maybe rebuilding, but they're upset about the pace of play. They're upset about the players' not willingness to throw in a pitch clock or their unawareness of how the game is too slow and it's not fun to watch. All of these things. I mean, 4-hour games in Boston, 3.5-hour games in Boston. The game is publicly perception is not in a good place. If you don't play baseball because you financially can't come to an agreement, and the NBA is having the playoffs, or the NHL is having the Stanley Cups, and the Stanley Cup, like, oh my God. Like, I would hate to think about what would happen to the game if that was to happen. And if they don't come to an agreement, that's exactly what's going to happen. People are going to turn on the game.
Lou, help me out then from a player standpoint. What is it you think? Listen, I don't believe that the players will agree to any sort of thing that's labeled revenue sharing. But I thought there was a chance that they would agree if we put a percentage on a cut. Like, hey, guys, can you give back 10% this year? Because the owners are saying we're going to lose $4 billion. Whether they are or not, that's what they're saying. Can you give back 10%? Where is the give from the players' side, Lou? I mean, the owners, listen, they'll take whatever they can get at this point, but where's the give from the players' side?
I think the union would love to have the owners open up their books fully, and they can see exactly, what they're making, what they're losing. So I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of look at the model of, say, like the NHL. And they say, you're not going to it's not going to be revenue sharing because we don't want anything to do with anything that resembles a salary cap. They'll never agree to it. But maybe just, money in an escrow, figure out the percentage, even if it is 10, 15%. And then that way at the end of the year, the union gets to see the books of Major League Baseball. And I know it's basically similar as the salary cap and what the NHL does, but a smaller percentage that the players might sit there and say, okay, maybe we can give back like a third, 50%. I just don't see them ever agreeing to something like that. But a smaller percentage in escrow, end of the year, open up your books, which the union would love to see anyways. So I think that there'll be an agreement there somewhere. I'm not so sure what it will look like, but 50% is probably too much. Definitely
all right.
Too much.
I had somebody throw this out to me a few days ago. If you're a player, you want to turn this into a win, Lou, we're not going to have minor league baseball this year. And with the exception of about 50 guys throughout an organization, nobody's making more than $25,000 a year, basically, playing minor league baseball. Lou, what if the players and owners agreed, the players were essentially going to give back whatever it is they're giving back, and they spread that money out to all the minor leaguers throughout each team system to give them some sort of check? Because these guys received a paycheck on like April 15th, and that's the only pay they've gotten playing baseball since Labor Day of last year. Do you think that's something that the players would maybe do for their own brethren, if you know what I mean?
I think that's a great idea because I think minor leaguers are grossly underpaid. I mean, I think it's ridiculous that basically their pay hasn't really changed since I was in the minor leagues in the mid-'90s. Nothing. I mean, it's pathetic what those guys down there make. I think it's devastating to organizations that there's no minor league system. Every year there's a guy in high A ball that takes that next step, that finishes the year in Double A, that is on his way to the big leagues. These are vital years for kids that are 21, 22 years old. And to miss that is devastating. So if those guys can help support them, I'd be all for it, and I think they would look good.
Lou, thanks for making time for us. We really appreciate it. All the best with you and your family. Stay safe, and hopefully we're talking about sports on the field the next time we chat.
I hear you, boys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Lou.
Lou Merloni, former Red Sox player. Now he covers the Boston sports scene on WEEI and also the NBC Sports Channel in Boston. Follow Lou on Twitter at Lou Merloni. And you and I, if you're just joining us, Miller and Moulton are never going to be against a guy telling his truth. We ask it of people, and then when they tell it to us, we believe it's disingenuous at best to beat him about the head and chest with it. But Lou Merloni's comments about Blake Snell going, listen, you can't be our spokesperson right now.
But, and, Lou's in the media, but Lou also played.
Right.
I'm going to allow him a lot more leeway to make an opinion about a ball player because he's an ex-ball player. When the guy who makes his living off of the ball player for his whole life rips the ball player for having an opinion, that's where David and I have a little bit more of a problem.
Mark, if you listen closely to what Lou said, it's kind of the mantra of our show. It wasn't what Blake Snell said, although he wasn't thrilled with it because it was focusing on the money more so than other things. But what was it, Mark?
How he said it.
Was how he said it.
It was the delivery. Absolutely.
Right. So Blake Snell getting support from his major league brethren, not getting a lot of support in the court of public opinion.
And he will get crushed throughout the rest of the day. If you keep listening to this station, my guess is Blake Snell, if he wasn't crushed yesterday, will get crushed today on every platform across the country. And Blake knows it because he already issued a bit of a retraction after his Twitch TV performance. But if he's on Twitch, I have to support him. We're on the same platform, David.
Gotcha.